to Nintendo Nostalgia, episode 179. I am your host, Ryan Black, and I am joined by my co-host, Jacob Brush, and we are back, and we are playing with power. Jacob, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. It feels like old times, Ryan, just you and I, the way we used to be. Finally.
It's been forever since it's been the two of us. No offense to Josh or anything.
No, Josh. It's going to be a good episode. We're kidding, Josh. We love you. We miss you. But you've been a little cranky in our text group lately, so we thought you needed a little break, catch a breather, catch a breath, and go play some Banjo-Kazooie, and then come back. So, right, I wasn't on when you just did the intro to the show. I wasn't on the screen to see you talk. I legit thought it was like you had a pre-recording of yourself, like the way you said it. It sounded like you hit play on a button and it was like a past episode.
I must be pre-scripting things then.
Yeah, I think so. And
I totally did the whole like, what are you waiting for, on my own every time. You know, and the outro to the show even.
You did? That was no way. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Cool.
I think it's time we get into what we are Radical Rexing about.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I'll just go first, I think. What am I Radical Rexing about? Nothing, I guess. Not much in life. Everything's the same, one day at a time. Learn a little bit. Be responsible. Work out. I'm getting back in shape slowly but surely. It's always a painful process to watch because it's like watching corn grow, but it will happen in time. So I'm getting back in shape, and that's great. And what else do we have here? I guess, I applied for a job late last week, and it was a really good interview. I really feel good about it. It's only for one person though, so we'll see. Well, we'll see if I can get it or not. I'll find out later this week. I'm praying and hoping that I get it. If I do, if I get this job, it's gonna be a huge answer to prayer. Huge, just way to forward myself in life. So, that's really all I'm Radical Rexing about. Nothing crazy on my end besides that. How about you?
Radical Rexing about a couple things coming out, but I did have a question before I get into what I'm Radical Rexing about. So you're taking a break from video games right now, and I completely get why you're doing it. But I gotta know, do your kids ask you to play certain games and you put it on for them, like Donkey Kong or something like that, and you just can't resist? And do you let them still play, or do you pretty much keep all the video games packed away and the kids ask and you're like, sorry, they're put away right now? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, thankfully Jack's so little he can't talk, so he doesn't ever ask. Riley, I feel like maybe she mentioned games one time. Outside of that, no, they don't really ask. So even if they did, like, it's not fun with them at this moment. They're at this stage in life, it's just not fun, like, to play with them, unfortunately, because she's almost 4. She'll be 4 in September, and like, she doesn't know how to play. She literally has an attention span of like 45 seconds, and then she's done. Let's change the game. Like, I bought her that stupid Go-Kart Garfield game, which is so bad. It really, really, really is. It's so bad. Oh my gosh. Like, I don't even know how they could put a game out that bad. But it was terrible. But like, I bought it for her, and like, we play it for like a minute, and then she wants to play something else, and it's just, so the value, the attention span, and to really appreciate what we're playing isn't there, and so it's just not fun, unfortunately. And it's really not fun even with Jack, being a single dad. Like, even if Riley is interested in the game, guess what Jack wants to do? He wants to rip the controller that you have out of your hand, and he'll throw a fit if he doesn't get it. So, no, it's not really fun, and it's quite easy to keep the games away, even if they want to play, because I know it's not a good time. If they were like, like 6 or 7, and they wanted like, Dad, let's play Mario Party or something, hold on. Yeah, if they're like 6 or 7 and they're like, Dad, let's play Mario Party or something, then it would be so much easier to have fun and play that. But they're not, so it's not as hard as you think. What about you, man? What are you Radical Rexing about?
Well, I finally got my Kickstarter copy of The Wonderful 101 last night. So I opened it up, popped it in my system, played it for a few minutes, did the intro, got further than I did in the demo when I played it back on Wii U.
Nice.
So that's something. It's very flashy. It's kind of hard to play in handheld just because tiny characters on a tiny screen. So I might be playing a little bit more, streaming it a little bit more just to get used to that. That's kind of my plan anyway. I'm building a work schedule for streaming. I'll be doing like 3 or 4 days a week. Set it like a job. And so I'm actually getting on for about 4 hours a day, and rocking the whole streaming shtick. Hopefully to do 101, Wonderful 101 with that. Tomorrow, a big Pokemon expansion update comes out. And Pokemon has also touted that they are going to be bringing out a direct of sorts, a presentation to talk about more than just the expansion. So my interest is piqued, to say the least. I'm excited about that, and I think it's getting ever so closer to the new Paper Mario, and that is going to be a blast. I cannot wait for the new Paper Mario. I am ready. I am so ready.
It's going to sell gangbusters because there's nothing else to play. I mean, literally. Nintendo hasn't really released anything. I guess they released Xenoblade, but
Xenoblade and Clubhouse games, which is actually really fun. It's great for.
This is a really bad year. Seriously, this is really a crappy year.
It's actually not a bad year for being a bad year, but we knew that the off year was going to come eventually. I thought they were going to fill it full of sports titles like they did in past years, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They have a big excuse. Their off year happened to hit on COVID outbreak, and so that helps them a lot and gives them a pass. And I think that they would be getting less of a pass were they not doing what they're doing right now, just releasing some big ports. And of course Animal Crossing came out.
Yeah, they did have the ports, so I guess.
I think it really did make them look really good in this off year for them. And I hope that the next couple of years are just filled with great stuff and great content. But this year seems a little lighter. I hope to eat those words come fall and winter when those big surprise games that Nintendo hasn't talked about come out. I hear a lot about a Super Mario 3D All-Star Collection.
Yeah, you watch. Like, they're just not going to have a direct. They're just going to drop a game out of nowhere. Like that Super Metroid remix, the HD remake, or the next Metroid, whatever. We know there's a Metroid game coming.
Yeah.
They have teased at it long enough. There is a Metroid game coming. But it's like they could just drop it in September or August and be like this Paper Mario thing. Here's the trailer for the Metroid game. Boom, comes out next month. Like, what? Because E3 happened, they really just scrapped everything of what they wanted to give us. I don't like that they're not doing directs. I think it's unwise for them to get away from directs. I really hope that is not the way they're venturing. I really hope it's not, because I can tell you, the directs make it special. It keeps the fans engaged year round. And those directs are what honestly help them stay relevant in the Wii U days, because it gave people something to look at and to like, okay, what's coming up next? What's going on? So man, Nintendo, don't stop doing directs. Seriously, you need them. You need them, and we need them.
I think the pandemic has an influence in that. Japanese work culture likes to work in office. I've got teacher friends in Japan who, even though they don't have kids in there, they still want the teachers to go into their office and do their classroom work and everything, like live streaming or whatever, from the school itself in the work building. So it's a very like everybody has to be there kind of mentality at the work office. So it's not a possibility right now with everything being on lockdown. So that's probably why we're seeing some things slow down. Now you do see some videos come out still, but I think the overall like everybody working together, anything that would be a big project like that is probably on hold or is working a lot slower than what it normally would at full productivity in Japan. So
absolutely. Well, hopefully we get some news soon. I really hope so. But
yes. Speaking of Metroid, I think that brings us into the topic of this episode. we are doing a character spotlight on Samus Aran herself.
In the reaches of space, below the surface of planet Zebes, Samus Aran faced the space pirates. She destroyed their operation, wiped out the parasites called Metroids, and defeated Mother Brain. But the pirates were far from finished.
Jacob, Samus Aran came on the scene on the NES.
Oh my gosh. I've been looking forward to this topic. I mean, people know me as like the rare guy who loves Donkey Kong monkeys and loves Banjo-Kazooie, but platformers. But Samus is my girl. I mean, seriously, if you could date a video game character, it'd be her. I think Samus is. I think she's hot. They make her hot, looking hot, and that's me being honest. People think that's weird. A video game character. We know Josh thinks it's weird. There's a reason they draw them hot because people like it, and I think Samus is the most beautiful Nintendo character that they've ever made. Attractive all around, and she could totally defend me if I got attacked by aliens, and I love that. So, but yeah, I did not become a fan of the Metroid series. Like, it's kind of, I have a weird history with Metroid because I played Metroid 2, Return of Samus, on the Game Boy all the time. But I had no flipping clue what this was. I didn't know what Metroid was. It was just a game that my brother had. And I played it and died, and there's no saving really. And you play and die. Well, there is saving, I guess. But you play and die, and I didn't know what a Metroid was. Like, I didn't know the story. I didn't know who Samus. I didn't even know that I was a girl at that time. I thought it was some dude with a mustache behind that mask, for all I knew. But yeah, so I played it on the Game Boy, and then it wasn't until later in life where I realized, because of Smash Bros, that Samus was a real character, and that she was the character in the game that I had played so much on a Game Boy back when I was younger. And I didn't know that Samus was a girl until Pikachu electrocuted her, and you could see her skeletal system, which showed that she was a female, based off of her breast. You know what I'm talking about? When you got electrocuted, and the first Smash Bros, it showed everyone
the outline of the skin, but then it shows the bones beneath it. Yeah, like an X-ray.
Yeah, so I didn't know Samus was a girl until then. And that was like a big deal back in elementary school to all the boys. What? So after that, it was the GameCube, and you really got me on board with it all. We were hanging out a lot more towards the GameCube days, and talking a lot more. And Samus was getting a big push finally by Nintendo. Like, they were having the Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime come out at the same time. And I wanted to get in on this new stuff, this new franchise. I remember watching you play Metroid Prime in your old bedroom at your parents' one November. Came over just to hang out, and you were playing it. And I'm just like, what is this? This is so cool, So I got them both for that Christmas, Prime and Fusion. And it's really when my understanding of the franchise and what was happening started to take off, because then Zero Mission came out, and I got to relive the original story, and then all the Prime games, and then we got to Other M, and Other M, even though we know it's had its flaws, I really enjoyed it. Thought it was really cool, and here we are, thirsty for more and more Metroid every year. Even though we had the remake of Metroid 2, which was fantastic. I beat it twice, 100%ed it 2 times. It is fun. And I still argue that it didn't get the push and drive that it should have had, because it was on the 3DS, not the new hot Switch. So, that's kind of my history with Metroid and Samus. And I obviously went back and replayed, like, Super Metroid. You let me borrow either you you didn't let me borrow it. That's not what it was. You got me into it, but I beat it on my Wii. Yeah, that's what it was. I beat it on my Wii. Maybe you did let me borrow it. I think you did let me borrow it originally on your Super Nintendo, and I beat it. And then I went back and revisited it years later. I bought it on my Wii, and I remember playing through it at my first apartment with my ex-wife. So depressing. I played it, and I rebeat it. And that was to build up to Christmas, because it was like the fall. I just got back from touring, my first big tour, and I replayed Super Metroid, and I beat it while I was waiting for the Wii U to come out, because I was tired of the Wii and wanted to get a nostalgic feeling for an old game that I hadn't played in a long time. So, yeah, Samus is awesome. She kicks butt. She has an emotional side that you learn in Other M, although it is not. It's not shown in the proper sense of what it was originally intended to, and we'll cover that. But that's really kind of my take on her. Ryan, why don't you tell us about your history with Samus and Metroid, and then we can really just dive into her character a little bit more and really dissect what Other M failed to do.
Sure. My first experience with Samus was with Super Metroid. I remember my cousins showing me that she was a girl under the suit. When she died in Super Metroid, it showed her kind of suit exploding or whatever, and it just shows an outline of her body. Almost kind of gives like a video game like scream sound. It's kind of interesting how they did that. But and then I played Metroid, the original Metroid, at one of those like arcade machines that had a bunch of NES games on it randomly, which is weird to play that game for the first time on that. But it reminded me of Super Metroid, and my cousins were playing that. We were playing. It took us years to get through Super Metroid all together. Going over to my cousin's house for New Year's and birthday parties, and we'd play Super Metroid, and we'd try to get through it, And it was definitely a year thing, like year after year, to get through the whole game, and it was a big undertaking. It was pretty cool. And then just diving on in, I played a little bit of Samus Returns, or was it Return of Samus? Metroid 2 on Game Boy. I played a little bit of that, but that was later in life. I think I even played it after the original Metroid. Or Metroid Prime. I actually beat the original Metroid on Metroid Prime. It was an unlockable thing that you could do. And of course, Metroid Fusion was around that time as well. And just gives you more lore of who Samus is and the interactions she has with different characters. Metroid Fusion really cemented the lore of Metroid in a concrete sense, with Adam and the Edakuns and Decoras, and just the dialogue and everything kind of gave her a voice, and it kind of carried over into future iterations. She didn't really talk too much in the Prime games, so you had just the atmospheric and the exploration there. But yeah, there's some games that have delved into her talking and dialogue and building upon her universe, but most of the time, Samus is a silent character, and you learn from her experiences and not necessarily from her dialogue. Not to say that Other M is not a bad thing. It is a bad thing for what it had done. I think there's other iterations of the story that is told better in paper articles. But it's really cool to see Samus grow over all these years, and definitely a big fan of Samus. I'm never really one to be attracted to video game characters or anything like that, but I really admire Samus for who she is, and the power suit is so awesome. I'd love to have one someday, and the Chozo just fascinate me, and that whole lore is just that's my Nintendo IP. That's my game. That's my top video game favorite universe for sure, and I love it so much. Now, Samus is portrayed nowadays as tall, slender, blonde, but she wasn't always that way.
Oh, yeah.
When she started out, she was a bit more stocky. She had brunette hair.
Yes, she did. You're right.
And, well, you could argue that she also had green hair, but if you were playing with the Justin Bailey code
Hmm.
on the original Metroid. But yeah, she wasn't always that blonde hair. In fact, she looked a little bit brunette even in Super Metroid, I would say.
I even think in
and-
Prime 1, I felt like her hair looked more brunette than it did blonde when she takes her helmet off at the end.
Yeah, it was definitely highlighted hair, to the point where it was, you could see where it could have been blonde, or you could have seen how it was, brunette. So it's kind of hard to tell, GameCube graphics. But I haven't played Metroid Prime in a long time, and I'm holding out for that Switch version. So
Yeah,
I
it'll
hope they get
come.
to experience that in an HD version, and But yeah, it's just Samus has evolved quite a bit since then. A lot of people complained when they put her in Smash Brothers as Zero Suit, and how she was a very different model than what she originally was. There's some purists out there like, oh yeah, Samus is always brunette and muscular and built and everything, and so
Yeah, no, I like the way she is today. I think this is the best version of her.
I don't care one way or the other, honestly. It
However,
doesn't matter too much to me.
I actually don't care for her Zero Suit Samus to be a character in Smash. I think it was just a lazy move, honestly, personally. I don't care for that. I think it's kind of weird to fight Samus and Samus when she's in her suit, I don't care for that.
I cared for it when it was a special costume or a special thing that you could convert into.
Yeah.
You use your special, it breaks away the armor, and you can actually play as Zero Suit. That was really, really cool. That was well pulled off. But as a separate character from Samus, it's a little different. Like, as far as continuity goes, but you also have like fighters with different costumes. It could be playing the same Mario but a different colored suit, so that doesn't quite break the illusion. But at the same time, like, it's interesting that they chose to stick with Zero Suit, and Zero Suit wouldn't even exist if it weren't for Zero Mission being a big part of it, other than just displaying at the end of a game that she's a girl with the suit off. But like,
right,
you could actually play as Zero Suit for the first time in Zero Mission, which was really cool. It was a stealth element. It was really well done.
It was.
Finally, Metroid can crawl.
Yeah. It really gave her, when they took the suit off, it really showed, I think, another part of her character. Talking about character, you always see, like, man, she's a beast inside that power suit. But when they took it off, she felt very vulnerable, obviously, because you could get killed so easily. But it still showed that she's very athletic, she's very determined, and that she doesn't need armor to get a mission done. Like, it still showed the fearless side of her. I mean, she, I guess you can look at her in Smash Bros. She can fight. She can really leave an impact without that suit on, which is good, and that really ties into Other M. And I really think we should get into it, just because Other M really rubbed so many. It was the dialogue rubbed the wrong way, and it ties into a comic book that never came to America, and they tried to base the dialogue of that game from that comic book. So it's like stupid, they did a terrible job. I don't know why they should have released that comic in America leading up to Metroid Other M.
Yeah,
people would have understood it so much more. I don't know, like we can dive into her lore real quick. Like, Samus was a child at the start of the comics, and her mom and dad were part of the Federation, and they got killed. And Samus's dad wrecks like a ship that he hijacked into like a space pirate ship. He tries to like take them all out with it. Kills himself basically for the greater good. Does nothing, obviously. And but Samus's mom, as a child, she was eaten right in front of Samus, like by Ridley. Ridley can talk in the comics. Ridley ate her mom right in front of her, and of course she's scarred and she's a freaking toddler here. This is terrible. I mean, it makes me angry just thinking about it right now. Have my own toddlers and stuff. And the Chozo took her in and raised her up. They raised her, taught her own morals, and obviously they created off her powers that she has. But
And you can see a picture of that in Zero Mission. One of the screenshots shows her as a young toddler, as a young child, standing next to a Chozo. I don't know if it's her mentor or what, but
I think so. But then, eventually at some point as she gets older, she goes from the Chozo to actually joining the Federation herself. And that's where Other M comes in along. And she has a military background with them, which obviously she leaves them behind and goes her own path because she doesn't agree with things that they do. And she forged her own way, going back to her roots with the Chozo, and then gets involved with the power suit. Now, the reason Samus looks like a whiny little girl in Other M, why is this? It caused a lot of controversy because at this point, like Ryan said, Samus was always the silent antagonist, that we had this mentality built up of who she was all these years. And she was a beast. She's taken Ridley down at countless times, and bigger enemies than him as well. And it's stupid. It's really stupid at how it's not. They try to do it right, and they did it right in Japan. I think, Ryan, didn't you send a translation about that this week?
They did a retranslation of Other M, and it makes a lot more sense. And I don't know if it was just a fan translation or if it was a better translation from the Japanese. I would be curious to see how the Japanese edition varied from the American one. And I'm sure that a lot of Japanese people who understood the American would understand where things went wrong. I think that we could bridge that gap. But it was a translation issue, among other things. Yeah, the game had its flaws as a game itself, but there was someone out there that actually re-recorded things and retranslated, and it just makes so much more sense, and it's conveyed so much better. And that just speaks to a poor delivery on this game that could have been great, but many things held it back. And I hope someday we get a true representation of what it should have been, and get that direct translation, that feel that was more adapted towards the manga storyline. I think there's a lot of good potential there, and we could really enjoy that story if it was delivered just a little better.
I do too, but I remember playing the game, and I remember thinking those exact things, like, why? There's the scene where you first see Ridley, and Samus, like, as a cutscene, it shows her as like a little frightened girl shaking, and she's terrified of Ridley. And I'm just like, okay, at this point, you've beaten this dude's block off like 5 times. Like, there's no reason for you to be shaking like a little girl. They're trying to relate back to the comic. It's stupid. They shouldn't be relating back to the comic, because it would make sense that this was her first adventure, okay? Her first fight against Ridley since then. That makes sense. At this point, she's like, I've already beat the crap out of this dude multiple times. I know how to do it, and I'm going to do it again. So that should have never been referenced there, in my opinion.
It almost feels like they tried to tell the story of the manga, but at the time that they told it, it was in the wrong part of the timeline. So this wasn't the first time that she met Ridley. But someone who doesn't know the Metroid lore and just goes off the manga would try to do this, but it directly conflicts with all the other times that she's met up with Ridley. Like, let's say no one has ever played any of the other Metroids at all, never knew that Samus ran into Ridley, and then they just took from the manga. But then when they put this in a timeline, it wasn't a reboot, it wasn't a retelling of the Metroid story. No, it was supposed to be in canon, in timeline. And that caused a lot of problems because it didn't sit well with everybody, because it didn't fit in the timeline right. It's not like that Zelda thing where there's the timeline splits into 3 parts and trying to figure out where all that maps. No, it's one like cohesive timeline, and Other M just kind of derails all of that and upset so many people because of that. It missed the mark, and Samus, a lot of things have come from that to give her character. If you overlook some of the flaws in the story and just see how she acts, at that time in her life. She talks about when she was younger on the Galactic Federation, how she was a rebel. She'd always put her thumb down. You kind of talked about Adam Malkovich, talking any objections, lady.
I hate that guy.
I loved him in Fusion. He was gruff and he rubbed me the wrong way, but I knew that he cared about her, and so that was kind of cool to see that there are people in the storyline that care about Samus. She's not just a lone wolf. But Other M kind of spoiled all of that and took it too far. People are desperate for more story beats, and I don't know if Metroid Prime 4 is going to have that. You had Galactic Federation officers talking to Samus, in Prime 3.
Yeah.
But she didn't talk at all.
No.
Or not much, So this isn't the first time we've heard dialogue in Metroid games. Super Metroid had dialogue, or had an intro with the last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some spoken word there. But Samus doesn't say a whole lot up until, those conversations. She does some, in her head, like monologuing in Fusion when she's talking about Adam and everything. But it's weird how poorly they pulled off all of that in the package that is Other M.
Sure.
I'm really hoping that the future holds better for her. And I don't want them to step away from her not talking at all, if it means that we don't get expansion on the story in some meaningful way. Like, I like the exploring the humanity of Samus and not just being a cold, killer. Even though she's good, like, she's more than that. But I don't think... I would say it would take several iterations of future Metroid before they should really tackle that, and should do it really well. They need a good storyboard artist and storyboard director and everything to really pull that all together and tighten all that up.
You know what would be cool, and it might, some people probably wouldn't want to do it, but I think it would be awesome if they went back and they remade the very first Metroid game full on, like, Prime 3D style, in that vein. We're replaying that first game, but it takes the story beats that Other M tried to do, and it really like the whole intro to it. The intro is not starting off on planet Zebes. It's starting off at her childhood, and it's telling a story, and it goes back to those events of Ridley murdering her mom and dad, and her, like, it just tells what the comic tells, and then they restart it up, and then they show her come into her first adventure, like Zero Mission, all done all over again, but even more like Negative Mission. I don't know. And I think that would be really cool at showing the foundation of what Metroid really is and who Samus really is and why she's the character she is, and that even in that first Metroid game, she could be scared of Ridley, and it would make sense then a little bit, to play into that side of her character. I don't know. I don't think Nintendo would ever do that, but that I think would be really cool if they did, or made a movie about it. They're trying to make movies. I think Metroid would be phenomenal movie, live action, phenomenal movie. I really do.
I am definitely ready to see a remake of Super Metroid, if done right. But this is the thing. Like, it has to be the formula that they've been going on with the, Samus Returns, for the 3DS, but it's got to be on Switch. It's got to have great looking, beautiful 2.5D graphics. And they can add stuff to it, and they can flesh out story more like they did in, they added on to Zero Mission and added stuff to it. Samus Returns, they added some stuff to it to add to the story. Like, it made it interesting, and it was still really well done. It didn't betray anything of the source material, the original source material. So, and I can see them doing a really good job with Super Metroid, and I'm ready for that. But, honestly, it's got to be Switch, like, top of the line quality graphics and everything for it to really, really resonate with me. And I believe they can pull it off. I really do. And I think that we're ready for it.
If they pulled it off, would it take back your number one spot as your number one game? Would it outdo Breath of the Wild?
See, I don't know. I really don't know.
I
It
would
had to
hope
do
it does.
have some wow moments to it, and even then, like Breath of the Wild has some different things that it does as a video game that
Uh-huh.
just completely captivated me, like getting lost in the world and
Right.
just exploring and everything. Like it's on a whole other level. But if they could even capture a glimmer of that in a Super Metroid remake and make the environments like so vivid and so alive, like yeah, I could definitely see that being something that would be, probably all-time favorite again. It's potential, but it's really hard to go up against Breath of the Wild for what it did and the awe that it inspired in me. It'll have to
Right.
have hit some certain notes that really resonate louder than what Breath of the Wild has.
Well, we'll see. Who knows? I mean, there is a new Metroid game on the way, whether it's a Super Metroid remake or it is a sequel, or a sequel finally to Fusion, which would be fantastic, please. But yeah, Samus has come a long way. So and current Samus, her DNA is half Metroid now, correct?
Yeah, it completely changed her over. The X parasite took over her body, was attacking different parts of her system, and they were able to neutralize it by injecting Metroid DNA, which is a natural predator for the X. In fact, the Metroids were created to fight the X because they were such a threat to the galaxy.
Yep.
Jozo saw, hey, this is bad. Let's stop it with these Metroids.
Yeah.
So, she now is a walking Metroid in some respects. So it's kind of cool that that's a thing.
Wow.
It's
I
really
hope she
cool to
doesn't
see how she
mutate or
progresses.
anything. That'd be gross.
There's a lot of hope that people really want to see, a progression past Metroid 4, which was Fusion. There hasn't been any story past that. People really want that and want to experience more of the lore, and I understand that. And again, I may say I'm ready for Super Metroid, but I think even more I am ready to see a continuation of the story.
Absolutely. I've been waiting
I would be
for
satisfied
that.
with either of them, but just to
Yes.
see where Samus goes from here. In Samus Returns, they teased evil Chozo.
Yep.
That had an army and disappeared into the galaxy, if you will.
Yep.
So there's that whole storyline thread. They in the Metroid Prime series, they've left breadcrumbs for Silex being the bad guy. They showed Silex's ship, and then they also showed Silex in Federation Force as a secret ending.
Yeah.
So like there's leading up in the Metroid series that the Prime series, that's what's going to be looked at, and the interactions between. And Silex, if you don't know, is from Metroid Prime Hunters originally.
Yeah.
One of the many bounty hunters that was answering the call in the Olympic system. But anyway.
I wonder, and what would you think about this? Do you think that they would ever just combine the timelines? Because they're not. It's not Zelda 2 separate timelines, but those events all they take place on 2 separate things. The events of the main story with Mother Brain and Space Pirates happen separately from what's happening with the Prime series when Samus was hunting down the giant evil Metroid Prime. There were Space Pirates involved, yes, but it was nothing was of Mother Brain commanding commands and whatnot.
They haven't taken that joiner or that separator yet on those 2 series. There's nothing that would step on some other canon. It's like you have different versions of X-Men or different versions of Spider-Man. They're different universes, and there's nothing joining them together yet, and they're standalone by themselves, but they could tie in. They make references to each other in some ways.
They happen. It's not 2 separate dimensions here. It's not like
it's not. But it could be if the story is written a certain way. It could be. It could be a different telling of Metroid's story, but it's not. It's supposed to all be self-contained in its own universe.
Yeah.
Like Metroid Prime is the line of Metroid Prime is kind of a prequel in a way to Metroid 4, Metroid 3. It's kind of seated in that
all
area.
Happens. I think Prime 1 through 3 all happens before Samus 2, Metroid 2, when she goes back and eradicates all the Metroids.
Yes, because she between 2 and 3, there's no time because she leaves planet SR388 and heads off to the space station, to set off Super Metroid. So it would either, it would have to take place that time before.
Yep.
Um,
Which is just wild to think about, honestly. She's actually like doesn't get a vacation. We get vacations from her adventures, but she doesn't.
Bounty hunters got to earn their keep. So
I guess. My goodness.
That's the profession.
Yeah. Well, that's really as much as I got on Samus. I think she's, they did show an emotional side that just seemed very, I don't even want to say girly. It's not girly. I mean, men are emotional too. So she just showed a vulnerable side in Other M that just poorly was portrayed and given across to. But in general, she, she is a strong character, a strong individual, and a strong woman. You talk about, people always want to see Zelda doing stuff. I mean, Samus is probably the baddest character Nintendo's ever made, and she's a female. And I think that's super cool,
Yeah.
With or without her armor. It's not just with armor. So, she's really cool. I like Samus, and yes, I have a nerdy, silly video game crush on Samus. And if I found a woman in real life that looked like her and she loved Jesus, I'd totally marry her in a heartbeat.
They really did expand Samus's power in Other M though, and the moves that she has, like flipping enemies around and ripping out like their heads and like blasting them, and like it was really cool to see the power that she held and the command that she holds on a battlefield and in those skirmishes and confrontations. It's really cool to see her in that positive light, despite the weird emotional misses that they might have had in Other M. So
absolutely cool, man. Well, why don't you do our due diligence and just round us out here?
Sure thing, man. You can find the show on our home at the Nintendo Village. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. You can find us on Facebook at Nintendo NOS, on our Twitter at Nintendo_NOS, and on our Instagram at Nintendo NOSIN. Shoot us an email at NintendoNostalgiaIN@gmail.com. You can call on our hotline, share your memories, and show us some love at 317-969-5690. Guys, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next week. Later, Preston.
See ya.
Any objections, lady?